By the early 90s, 25-year-old Teri Hatcher was newly divorced and one of many struggling young actresses in Hollywood. In addition to a recurring guest role on MacGyver, she'd had minor roles on Murphy Brown, Tales from the Crypt, and Soap Dish, and had been in a number of made-for-TV movies. It was enough work to pay the bills, but she was hardly a star. At that time, the biggest show on television was Seinfeld. The self-professed show about nothing had become not only a huge hit, but a cultural phenomenon.
That show was so huge at the time, it was the #1 show on television and a lingering legendary status.
And Teri Hatcher was about to become part of that legend. In 1993, Teri was cast for a guest spot on a Seinfeld episode called The Implant.
Seinfeld was the preeminent show of its time, and guest appearances on Seinfeld brought with it a great deal of attention and publicity.
She played this woman that Jerry was dating, and she just had this amazing body, and, you know, he questioned whether or not it was all real.
Her parting shot at Jerry became one of the iconic lines from the series, taking its place alongside classics like No Soup 1 Year and Not That There's Anything Wrong with It.
And all fans of Seinfeld know this line that Teri delivered to Jerry, referring to her breasts as they're breaking up.
She looks at Jerry and she says,
"Oh, and by the way,
they're real."
And they're spectacular.
It was definitely fun.
With the Seinfeld appearance, Teri's star was definitely on the rise.
She had been in Hollywood guest starring on very successful shows, MacGyver, Love Boat, Seinfeld, but until you actually land a lead role on your own show, you haven't yet hit that next level up.
In the meantime, Teri got plenty of offers for more guest starring roles, but she was beginning to tire of the types of parts she was being offered.
Teri was wary that she was getting typecast as, you know, just somebody who kind of, you know, spoke with a squeaky voice and had a nice body. And so she was saying, you know, I want to do something legitimate, so I have a career here, and it's not over by the age of 32. And that's when Lois and Clark came along.
Lois and Clark was a new series ABC was developing that explored the relationship between Superman and Lois Lane. Dean Cain, who had recently made a splash on Beverly Hills 90210, had been cast as Superman, and the network was looking for a Lois.
The idea was to present it as a romantic adventure with the emphasis on romance. She would still be the beautiful Lois, but there would be much more to her. She would be smart. She would be a journalist. She would be on a level with Clark Kent.
Before I started the show, what I knew of Teri Hatcher was, wow, she's really hot. In person, I think you're startled by her intelligence. I mean, she's a very intelligent lady.
With Lois and Clark, obviously the casting was essential, was crucial. You needed people with great chemistry, and ABC pretty much found that with Teri Hatcher.
There was great chemistry between Dean Cain and Teri on Lois and Clark, there's no question. That was pretty much the substance of the show. That was everything. Without that chemistry, there is no show.
I always think it's amazing that any two people can be together 15 hours a day for 9 months in a row. But no, we make a pretty good team.
Audiences agreed. Lois and Clark was an instant hit, and Teri Hatcher became a household name.
She was a star now, and so this was now her time. She was in her prime.
And Teri was not only a star on television. A publicity shot made for the release of Lois and Clark quickly became the most downloaded photo on the internet. Some joked it was her picture that put AOL in business.
She was surprised by what a big deal. You know, there's no skin, you're not seeing anything, but she's the most downloaded woman on the internet.
A subsequent poster made of the shot was a huge seller and found its way to the bedroom wall of millions of teenage boys.
The one thing you have to say about Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman, was that it made Teri Hatcher a star, an A-list star, from that point on. She was no longer an up-and-comer. She was, in fact, a big star, and that show did it for her.
But stardom didn't go to her head. Teri earned a reputation for working hard and being good to cast and crew.
If we were working deep into the night, she'd have food brought or coffee bar brought. She understood that she could do her job properly without everybody else being able to do their job properly.
Despite her crazy schedule, she often found time to bring homemade baked goods onto the set.
Teri loves to cook and loves to bake. I've known her to bake for all sorts of groups of people, the crew, special friends. It's just a good baker, good cookies and things.
Once again, she and her co-star, in this case Dean Cain, became an item, at least in the tabloids. While they did go on a few dates, it never became anything serious.
It was very brief, and I think it was more they went out on a date or two and then went, okay, well, I think maybe we should just be friends. I think that's sort of the way that went.
And while a romance with Dean Cain may have gotten anywhere, a blind date arranged by a friend would go considerably further.
During the time that Teri was in Lois and Clark, not only was her star on the rise, but her romantic stars were falling into place as well. That's when she met John Tenney, who she would marry by the time she was in the second season of the show.
John Tenney was a Juilliard-trained actor whose father, like Teri's, was a nuclear physicist. After dating for less than a year, Tenney and Hatcher were married in New York in May of 1994. From the start, show business presented the two with challenges that most young couples don't have to face.
I believe he was in New York doing a Broadway show. She's working 15 hours a day in LA with us. You know, it's difficult.
My husband's shooting a movie in Vancouver, so he couldn't be here, so the mom was gracious enough to be my escort.
Is your husband jealous that you've shown up with another man tonight?
I don't know.
I think so. He's a good friend, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Teri's stature as one of Hollywood's hottest stars continued to grow. In 1997, she was cast as Paris Carver, love interest to James Bond in Tomorrow Never Dies.
Was it something I said?
How about the word, I'll be right back?
She was very excited when she was going to do the Bond film. She thought that was, she was really excited about that opportunity and doing that.
Bond movies have a tradition of spotlighting beautiful women. It's like a good housekeeping seal on your sexuality and beauty.
But Teri had a secret she kept from the movie-going public.
When she was on Girl and Tomorrow Never Dies, she was actually 4 months pregnant at the time.
Well, at 4 months pregnant, I feel extremely sexy.
As Lois and Clark entered its fourth final season, and Tomorrow Never Dies hit box office gold, there was no longer any question that Teri Hatcher was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. It was hard to imagine that she would soon decide to leave it all behind.